Just take a look at the Old Wagon Wheel. I mean, how cool is that thing? It takes at least 2 people to carry, it's prominent, it has some heft and history to it. Is that not one of the coolest rivalry trophies in college football? Well, the fans in Utah, particularly the ones who root for either BYU or Utah State, sure know the importance of this rivalry and that Wagon Wheel trophy. It's been fought for since 1948, but this rivalry goes all the way back to 1922 when 2 of Utah's storied institutions took to the gridiron. We'll dive into the historical significance of this rivalry on this edition of Stadium Rivals. Although Brigham Young Academy played a few football games between 1896 and 1900, the school in Provo, Utah, that became Brigham Young University in 1902, considers the 1922 season its first official college football campaign. And who was first on the schedule that year? That would be Utah Agricultural College, the school in Logan, Utah, that became Utah State in 1957. The Aggies would destroy the Cougars in that contest, winning 42-3 on October 7, 1922, setting the stage for the future rivalry. Utah Agricultural College would win 6 of the first 7 games, with a tie coming in 1926. BYU earned its first win in 1929 by a score of 7-6. That would start a streak of 4 straight wins, but Utah AC would take a 12-5-3 edge until 1948, when the Old Wagon Wheel rolled its way into the rivalry. The Mormon faith has its roots in Utah after Brigham Young himself brought the religion on its westward journey from New York to the Utah Territory in 1844. Those early pioneers would travel by covered wagon, wheels rolling across the tall grass on their journey west. The Old Wagon Wheel came into existence in 1948, awarded by the Blue Key fraternities of both schools. Since both schools feature large portions of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the trophy seems most fitting. The Aggies would win the first matchup for the new trophy 20-7 that year, taking the Old Wagon Wheel back to Logan after the win. We jumped to 1972 because the domination from the Aggies was too much for BYU to handle. Utah State held a commanding 27-17-3 record in the rivalry before BYU made a hire that would change the course of the program. LaVell Edwards was hired by BYU before the 1972 season, ushering in a new era. His pass-heavy offenses featured some of the game's top quarterbacks. Although Edwards and BYU dropped their first 3 games to Utah State, Edwards would only lose to the Aggies 3 more times in his 29 seasons in Provo. After a knee injury at the end of 1978 robbed him of his junior season in 1979, BYU QB Jim McMahon became the starting QB for the Cougars. He showed how good he could be with his best game of the season against Utah State, completing 21 of 33 passes for 485 yards and 6 touchdowns. BYU led the nation in passing yards, total offense, and scoring that season. And in the Holiday Bowl, McMahon led BYU back from a 45-25 deficit with 4 minutes to play, ending with a 46-45 win over SMU on an improbable Hail Mary.
McMahon all the way back at his own 46, throwing for the end zone. Receivers are there, defenders are there. It is in the end zone. Who has the ball? BYU. Touchdown!
Fans dubbed the game the Miracle Bowl. A QB by the name of Steve Young entered his senior season in 1983 and threw for 331 yards and 2 touchdowns against Utah State as the 6-1 and number 15 Cougars edged their rivals 38-34. Young's 71.3% completion percentage set an NCAA record in 1983. Prior to BYU's battle with Utah State in 1984, the Cougars jumped to the number 1 team in football with a 12-0 record. A 38-13 win by BYU propelled the team to a Holiday Bowl win over Michigan and BYU's first and only national championship. At the time of LaVell Edwards' retirement in 2000, the BYU legend ranked 2nd all-time in wins with a single program at 257, going 21-6 against rival Utah State. Before the final game of the 2000 season, BYU Stadium was renamed LaVell Edwards Stadium in his honor. What if I told you there was another trophy that all 3 Utah schools battle over? Well, in 1971, the Beehive boot was conceived, an authentic pioneer boot that's estimated to be over 100 years old, given to the Utah school, Utah, Utah State, or BYU, with the best record against its in-state rivals. We won't get into the tie-breaking scenarios if these teams don't do battle, but it's another trophy to go to a football-hungry Utah program. First, Utah State dominated. Then it was all BYU. But with a win in 2017, Utah State's second in 4 years, the Aggies are currently in possession of the Old Wagon Wheel heading into the 2018 matchup. BYU's edge of 48-36-3 in this long-running rivalry means the Wheel has made many travels between Logan and Provo, establishing this trophy and this matchup as a top rivalry in the sport and worthy of its place on Stadium Rivals.